Hi, and welcome to PBS News. I'm Deema Zein. Last night, we watched President Trump address a joint session of Congress. And to break down everything we saw, we are joined by PBS News Capitol Hill correspondent Lisa Desjardins and PBS News White House correspondent Laura Barrón-López. Thank you both for joining us.
Good to be here.
All right, to jump in for the both of you, last night, obviously, we watched President Trump give his speech to Congress, and he laid out his vision for the rest of his term, but he also reflected on the past 44 days in office, when a lot has happened in those 44 days. So, and you both were on Capitol Hill covering this last night. So the theme of the speech was the renewal of the American dream. We had some other Democratic lawmakers who said they're going to silently protest. Yeah. But there was one protest that stood out, and we have a video. So,
Mr. Green, take your seat. Take your seat, sir. Take your seat. Finding that members continue to engage in willful and concerted disruption of proper decorum, the chair now directs the Sergeant at Arms to restore order. Remove this gentleman from the chamber.
Now, Lisa, you were in the chamber. We can't really hear exactly what he's saying. I don't know if you know, but can you tell us a little bit about that moment?
Well, he told reporters afterwards that what he was saying is that the president does not have a mandate. President Trump kept saying, I have a mandate. It does not have a mandate. Specifically, Al Green was concerned about Medicaid, to enact Medicaid cuts. Now, there's a lot to say, and I think we'll probably do more segments on what's going on with Medicaid and the Republican budget. So Al Green said he was worried about people in his district who are poor, who depend on Medicaid, and about the cuts that he sees coming. Now, you're right. He wasn't the only one protesting, but it was completely unprecedented. I have never seen anyone interrupt a speech for that long and stay standing for that long. And we've never seen anyone have to be removed from the chamber or ushered out by the Sergeant at Arms as we did before. You know, when we had Joe Wilson, the Republican who interrupted President Obama and said, you lie, that was at that moment shocking that happened. It was, no one really knew how to react. It was completely an abandonment of protocol and rude to the sitting president. But that ushered in this era. And now here we have at the other end a Democratic member standing up and protesting so long that he was forced out.
I think you just kind of answered, this is Mark Taylor-Canfield from YouTube's question, which was, when was the last time a member of Congress protested at a presidential speech to Congress?
The last time was, I think last year with President Biden, when Marjorie Taylor Greene yelled, and she yelled out about Laken Riley, and then a bunch of other Republicans joined in protest. She actually was potentially in some ethical trouble for a minor infraction, like wearing a hat in the chamber when Democrats were in charge and when President Biden was there. But she wore her hat last night. She kept it under her shawl, like sneaking it in. Mm-hmm. So this is now, unfortunately, a yearly occurrence, and Republicans have certainly done it the most, and then we saw Democrats really feeling the need to do it this time.
Why didn't the rest of the Dems do something?
I mean, there's clearly been a bit of fracturing within the party, especially after the election, and you can kind of see it dividing a little bit amongst generational lines or leadership, who's in leadership and who's not in leadership, which is that the leaders of the Democratic Party, whether they're in the Senate or in the House, had been telling their members yesterday, we don't want to vocally protest, don't do anything that it draws too much attention, don't take an aggressive act of protesting. And there was dissent in the meetings that they had. And there were, more progressive members or younger members who disagreed with that, saying that they thought that this was the moment. I mean, how can the party on one hand say that during the election have said that Donald Trump was a threat to democracy? They're continuing to say it as he basically steamrolls past Congress, which is, I think, another thing we should talk about. But they're arguing over and over again that what he's doing is not normal, and that he's basically disregarding their entire Article I powers of Congress. And so why treat it as normal? And why go in there and just sit there during a speech as though everything is normal? And so you're seeing the party basically disagree on how to respond to him. Mm-hmm. And there were some members who didn't show up, like Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She wasn't there. She was doing, I believe, a live stream at the time, responding to the speech in real time. There were the progressive members, as Lisa noted, who had the sign. Some of them walked out. I think Congressman Maxwell Frost had a shirt that said on the back, "There is no king here." So you're seeing a bit of a fracture amongst Democrats about how exactly to respond to President Trump, how quickly they respond, and they're struggling a bit because they aren't necessarily adapting to this new media ecosystem, which is very much 24/7, especially online. And the older lawmakers and the leadership is not necessarily like aware of how to be online and combat Republicans online in the way that you're seeing President Trump, or the way that you're seeing Vice President Vance tweeting out almost daily, and Elon Musk also is tweeting almost every single hour on his social media platform to his more than 200 million followers. You're not necessarily seeing the equivalent of that on the Democratic side.
And probably a lot of folks watching know this, but they not only enlisted sort of this, like, especially male podcast culture, but they've really enhanced it. And they've kind of created this almost industry around Trump of like younger, often, not always younger, but kind of male podcasters with large male, not entirely male audiences that they have really created into its own universe now that they've deployed, and that Musk has been very good at deploying too. Now, most other Democrats did, in fact, protest silently. You saw women wearing pink. That was for solidarity and also to signify women power. But you also saw the signs put out by the Progressive Caucus that had a variety of phrases on them. Some said Musk steals. Some said, I think, save veterans, protect Medicaid, and on the back, false. Rashida Tlaib, who a lot of the people watching may know, representative, she had a whiteboard where she was changing the phrases she was writing to keep up with the president's speech. And they were very clever. I got to tell you, if you look at my Twitter feed, I put out a bunch of them. But at one point when she was talking about immigrants, she said, when he was talking about immigrants, she wrote, what about the immigrants who worked for you? So there was a real attempt to try and remain dignified against a president who Democrats do not see as dignified, a president who was really lobbying, in some part, really petty jabs at them during this speech. They wanted to remain dignified. Most of them kept with that. But a few of them, Al Green stood up, and a few others wore shorts that said resist. And they also were escorted out of the chamber.
I want to ask you, what was Trump's goal in the speech yesterday, and do you think he succeeded at it?
Well, I think Trump's speech, hit on a number of themes. I mean, it was essentially him trying to justify the actions that he's taken so far to the American public. All while a lot of Americans voted for him to address their issues with the economy and what they viewed was an economy that wasn't working for them. And the president didn't exactly address that last night. He talked a lot about his anti-transgender agenda. He talked about his efforts to lead one of the biggest deportation plans, potentially in American history. And he also, talked a lot about his effort and the efforts that he's tasked Elon Musk, currently the wealthiest person in the world, with to completely slash the federal government, cut spending across the board, root out, so-called fraud, although they haven't provided evidence of fraud to date, and to gut the federal workforce. So those were some of the key elements of his speech. He also talked a little bit about foreign policy and him saying that he still wants to find a peace deal with Ukraine, not attacking Ukraine as much as he has in recent days, where he's repeated falsehoods in leading up to the speech, saying that Ukraine was responsible for starting the war. It was Russia who invaded Ukraine. I mean, he is trying to justify the actions that he's taken to date, which are receiving some backlash. But really what we should be paying attention to is what he ultimately does, not what he says.
Yeah.